Hello, this is Charles Russell again with my video series on JavaScript. And today, guess what? This is the only slide you will see. We're going to do a live demo. Now what I have open here is I have Firefox opened up, and I've just got the default page. It comes when I open up Firefox in Ubuntu. And that's fine for what we're going to demo here. What we really want to concentrate is this area down here. This is something called Firebug. I've showed this before my last demo. Again, I put a JavaScript statement here, and I'm going to get that statement repeated and the return value shown up here. So let's get on with it. Let's start with the simple assignment operator. So I'm going to set x equal to 5. What did I do here? Oh, I pushed some button here. Okay. So x is going to be equal to 5. Okay, now put enter, and again, I now have a return value of 5, which means that's what's going to be now be an x. So some people might think, okay, well, x is sort of a string. No, it isn't really a string. Remember, a variable is not a string. Let's make that a string and try to assign a number to a string. And we're going to get a mistake because you can't assign a primitive to a primitive. As I said before, it's not a common mistake, but occasionally you do see this. Now, another thing that once you've got this thing assigned, we want to start. This is probably the only thing about assignment I'll go into here. But I do want to talk a little bit about the next thing, the addition operator or the plus operator, which remember that in JavaScript serves both the purpose of a string and a number. Now, if you're just going to add two numbers, you're going to get exactly what you would expect. No difficulty whatsoever. And if I try to use some other data type other than string, say a Boolean, why do I keep trying? Okay, plus true. It's going to try to convert that Boolean to a number, and with the number it's going to try to convert to is a 1 if it's true and a 0 if it's false. Let's see if it succeeds. And it does. We get a 6. Now, here's the thing about the plus operator. Although it'll try to do type conversion like this operator is going to behave a little bit differently than the others, and I'll show it in the minus sign how it normally would be, how numbers are normally cursed. But that's because, again, this is the concatenation operator. It tries to take two strings and puts them together. In other words, it's trying to do something like this. So let's take two strings and put them together. So copy. Go take this back to my console, and I'm going to paste that in. And voila, we had two strings up here. We had the concatenation operation take place. Now we have one string as a return value. Now this is great until you start doing something like now, what this is going to do is concatenate the number 5 to 5, because remember that when it's trying to work with strings, it's going to try to make things a string because it may be a string or number. So when I do that, I'm going to get back a string containing 55. Now I could force that to be a number. If for some reason I want that string that returned back, I have a string variable and I want to convert it to a number, I can do that. This is called typecasting, and when I push enter, it'll get converted to a number, and we get the expected result. Now this works fine until we start doing something like we put a letter in there. This does not make sense at all to the interpreter, so it's going to come back with a nan, because a number there's no way I can make a into a number. Now, for the subtraction operator, we're going to get the way it works with most other mathematical operations, and the fact that it operates, and the fact that it's going to always return a number. Even in the unary mode, you're still going to get a number. So let's look how that looks like. Again, if I have a minus sign and I have a string, this is going to get the expected result. What it's going to do is convert that 5 to a number. Let's change that to a 2. And we'll get back 3. Expected. Even if I take and put something like, if I do this, like I said, the plain number, we already know that that's going to work. But if we do something really weird, like we get the NAND value back. Now, remember we said there was 2 ways to use this, a unary mode and a binary mode. So if we go back to our x, we have a value in x because we said it earlier. It's got 5 in it, right? So remember that the unary minus is going to change the sign of the value, return the opposite sign of whatever's in the variable. And that's what you expect back. X still has 5, but you have the return value of 5. Now, this is really great, but what happens when I want to do this with a literal? That works fine, but this is going to be part of what we talk about in the next video. In that case, it thinks it's a decrement operator, which is not what we want. So to fix this, all we have to do is put in a parentheses around that minus 5, and we get back the expected result. So this brings up the increment and decrement operator. Remember what that does? Let's go over here and take a look. So if I go back and say, see what happened? X gets we're going to get the return value of 6. And X, by the way, contains the value of 6 as well, because the increment is actually incremented that variable. So you see that you have 6. But look at this. If I do this, so in other words, I put the x on the other side, my return value will be 6. But x is now going to contain 7. Huh? It's a little easier to understand if you look at it as if I'm doing an assignment. So let's set another value y. So whatever value that y returns, whatever value x returns is going to come back into y. So let's do the operation and see what we get. Well, y has 8. That would be expected. And if we look at x, x is going to have 8. But it gets interesting if I switch this the other way around. Now, in the first case, what happened is that the value of x was incremented and then assigned to y. So first the increment happens, then the assignment. So both x and y have equal values. But in this case, y is still 8, but x will be 9. And that's because the opposite happens when you put it on the other side. In this case, the value of y gets assigned the value of x, and then x gets incremented. This can be important in some kinds of cases. Now let's talk a little bit about comments. Here's some code that I was studying, and I've added this little bit in here just to kind of show you the different comment types. So in just this little piece of code here, you're seeing all 3 types. You see your single line comment, and you can see that it's gray. Everything that's commented is gray. So the next line is normal code. In this case, you see a multi-line comment, and then here you see the documentation comment. And oh, by the way, this does some cool things. If I push that @ sign in there, oops, you can see that I have all these other things like author or everything. These other things. Or if I do a document if I do a document comment in front of a function, like I'm going to do right here, look what happens. it's already trying to figure out, well, it knows it's going to return undefined, and the type, they haven't put in the type. You haven't defined the type here, but you would put in what type you're putting in there. And so you have the $ variable, and then a variable called Drupal. Pretty slick and very useful. So that's all we're going to deal with on this one. Let's go back to our code base here a little bit and look a little bit about the conditional operators. In this case, we're just going to work with the equal. Now, I'm going to show you a page. This is the rules to how equal gets resolved when type coercion takes place. And this is a lot to remember. This is why people don't normally use the double equal. And they use a triple equal. Because sometimes things will fool you. Here's an example. Let me take the simplest case. A number equals a number. This is going to behave just as you would expect it to. We're going to return back a value of true. Now, if I do this same thing, and I convert this to a string, and I just made a common mistake. I do that all the time. There. My mistake was I put a single quote, then a double quote. It should be either two single quotes or two double quotes. So now we get back the value that we expected. But when you start mixing things, so let's say I put in, well, 7 is truthy, right? So wouldn't that evaluate to true? And the answer is no. That's because the true, when it's converted to a number, is going to be 1. Now the statement is true. If I reverse that, you still get back false. Just trying to let you know that this is one of these things. People would expect that this would possibly come back true. There's other weirdness that happens. The rules get really, really complex. For instance, if I set some sort of expression in here, and I'm just doing this to make sure that it attempts to evaluate the stuff first. Now, when I do 7 plus a, we're going to get back a nan. All right. Now, when I execute this, it's false because even we know what 7 plus a is going to be nan. Oops, there's where I made a mistake here. I need to make that a number. See, I forgot my own thing with the concatenation. I was trying to force a nan to happen. Now we get the nan, and we'll also get nan for that particular operation there. So that's a little bit about the conditionals, and we're going to use these conditionals in our branching statements that we were talking about earlier. So let's go over here and look at branching. So I redid some codes just to make things quick and easy. So let's pick this up. And we'll paste it into the console. Now, in this case, this is the first time we've seen the multi-line. I forgot to open this up. This is the first time we've seen this multi-line tool that you have available to you in the console. In this case, this code won't run until I push the run button. So I'm going to set x equal to 7. And I'm going to put a semicolon. This is a habit you should get into as well, because the semicolon signifies the end of a statement. And although technically the JavaScript specification says that the code will execute by ending a statement with a new line or the semicolon, if you try to do something like minification, which is very useful and really improves the performance of your JavaScript, not having a semicolon is going to cause a lot of problems. So be sure to get in the habit to put it in. We'll talk about minification when we get there, but just a really good habit to put a semicolon on. So let's keep on going so we don't go too much over time. So if I run this code, we are going to remember truth or false. Well, x is going to evaluate to true because it's not 0, right? So when I run this, what did I do here? X equals 7, x equals 0. I should be getting an alert box. Why don't I see an alert box? There it is. Okay, I don't know what I did, but I'm getting what I expected to have happened. So again, say okay. Good deal. We got what expected. Now if I put a 0 in here, in this case nothing will happen. It'll just fall through to whatever the next statement is. And if I put something down there like alert, and I'll just put down something like I'm next. Doesn't make any difference what the string is. I don't know why I'm typing B all the time right now tonight. This is part of multiple attempts I've made at this tonight, so we keep getting interrupted by phone calls and dogs. So now that we've got this done, let's put this semicolon on the end. And now when I execute this, and again, I did the same thing with the quotes. There. So in this case, it went through the code. It couldn't execute this, so it fell through the next line. Now, you may want to do an else statement. Now, that's going to be, in this case, all right, let's find my code. Okay, so here is our if else statement. And I will just paste this over the other code from right here. So in this case, it's going to execute. I try to execute this code block, and if it can't, it'll execute this. So let's run this. Okay, that would be expected. And if I set x to false, in this case, well, let's just do something different. Let's put it to null this time. Now if I run, again, null is a falsy value, so it didn't happen. Now there is one other branch structure if structure we discussed, and that was the if then else. So let's take a look at this really quick. So I'll cut this code here. Should say if else if was the name I was trying to say. And I'm going to take that and again paste this all in here. So in this case, because this is null and this is 0, these are both falsy values, we should fall through to this other one right here. So if I run this, guess what? We get the expected result. If I change that y to some value other than 0, say 8, and I run it, we get the I did not string we would expect to have here. If I change that null to, say, another number, and then run, we get the value we expect. Now, we also talked about the switch statement. So in this case, let's make sure that y is something we would expect. So let's set, I'll come back to that. I'm going to set y undefined for now because later on it's going to save us a lot of problems if it is undefined. It makes explaining something a little easier later. Okay, so I'll just run this code again one more time. Run. Okay, fine. And so let's copy our case statement. So in the case statement, remember that what it does is it's going to take a look at whatever values pass to the switch statement. So let's go over here and copy this and put this in our console. And to make life simple, let's make x equal to 7 again, and then run. So what's going to happen is it's going to go through here and say, okay, this is what I want to check. Is the value 4? No. Is the value 7? In this case, it is, so it's going to put out 7 in a box. So let's run this and make sure that that indeed happens. What did we do here? Reference area undefined. Alert. What did I do? RT. Oh, it just tried to execute the RT. I had to highlight it. So now let's run this. Okay, we get 7. What I had was I tried to run it with a highlighted, which is also kind of useful. If I just want to run one piece of the statement, I can just highlight it and run just that one line. All right, so now that we've got that done, we know that that works. So let's check to see if the 4 value is going to work. So if I put 4 in there and I click run, good. But now there is a thing we need to be aware of here. Remember I said you have to have the break in? Let's remove that break for right now and watch what happens. We get 4. We'd expect that. But see how it fell through and did the next alert box? Sometimes we want that to happen, but that's not the rule. Now what happens if x is equal to neither one of those three? Well, then we're going to get the default. So that's pretty much it on branching. But the other thing we talked about in the previous videos we just went through was something called looping or iteration. And we talked about several different types of iteration. So let's go over here and grab some sort of, let's go grab the code for that, for the while loop. And look what happens here. So for this while loop, what I did was I said, if y is not equal to 10, x not equal to 10, then I want you to execute some code. So I don't remember what the value of x was, so we'll just set it. So we're going to say x is equal to, so the value of x is now 7. Semicolon, let's run the code. Now this is the first time I've used a console object. This is kind of a cool thing. This will put it into the console, not the screen. So in this case, I said I want the value of x is 7, 8, and 9. And you could see that when it got to 10, it didn't execute. Now if x was 10, this would not execute even once. See, it tried, but the value didn't change, so 10 is the value, so it never happens. Now, to assure the thing did happen, this is why I went back and made sure of some things. Let's make sure one other thing. Let's make sure that z is undefined too. I'm just making really sure that I get what I expected. So let's go back and cut this do while, or do loop. So in this case, the code's going to execute at least once. And we want that to happen. Copy. So let's go back over here to our console and paste this in. Now in this case, we're going to use the type of operator. So we're going to have an operator, which is forming an expression, as part of a logical expression. So in this case, we're going to use the do loop. So in the do loop, remember that the logic is checked at the bottom. So the very first thing, we know this is going to run at least once. So if I run this, you can see that I do a countdown. And remember that if the type of operator returns a string with undefined in it. So make sure that when you use the type of operator, you put the quotes around whatever you're expecting back. Then in this case, if z was undefined, and we made sure that it was, then we want to set z equal to 10. Then from then on, we want to decrement z one value at a time. So the first time through, we set z to 10. We subtract 1 from 10. So the value of z would be 9. The next time through, again, we're going to have the logic is checked the bottom. Okay, we've already determined that this is not true, so it's just going to fall through the next statement. Z gets decremented again, and you have 8. This continues all the time until z is greater than 6. So when it hits 7, this stops. So this brings up the last of the structures, I think, that we're going to discuss in this little thing, and that's the for loop. So the for loop is actually useful for a lot of reasons. So let's copy this back over to our console. Now, this is another way of doing a count variable. In this case, we're going to, remember I said there was 3 values. So in this first statement, or 3 statements as part of it, we are going to set the value of I to 1. Now, for our second statement, our conditional, we're going to say, if I is less than 10, we want to loop this. And for our final thing, we're going to increment I. So what this is going to do is count from 1 to 10. Let's run this and watch what happens. And what I did was the same thing with the, I thought I'd fix that with the quote. So run it, now it'll work just fine. So that's it. I probably went a little over on this. This is actually probably about 25-30 minutes. So I'm about double where I wanted to be. But I wanted to cover a lot of material, and I wanted to cover it enough so that you could at least get a gist of what's going on here when you start writing code. You even got to see a little bit of debugging, unintentionally, but you got to see it. So for the next time, what I'm going to do is start discussing functions. So we're going to be coming in and out of functions and objects a lot in this course, and I'm going to tell you now that functions are some of the most powerful tools in JavaScript. Matter of fact, in this language, they are more powerful than any other language. And objects form the basis of almost everything that happens in JavaScript. So don't let anybody tell you that JavaScript is not a object-oriented language. So what I did here, just a quick summary, was I went over the some operations. I didn't go over them all, but I just wanted to give you enough to get the gist of what was going on as you use these different tools, because showing a slide wasn't really a good example. I apologize for using the slides, but they do help me to keep my 15 minutes, and hopefully we'll be able to do some other videos when I get done with this course that are a little more freeform, like some of the ones I've done on installing Drupal. Anyway, next time we'll get on to the functions. Have fun.